Hi, I'm Vanessa Gordon with Gordon Law in Lincoln, Nebraska, and today we're talking about part 2 in our series on avoiding divorce and staying married. As I said in our last video, I talk a lot about divorce, a lot. But this week I'm talking a little bit about avoiding ending up in my office and some things that I have observed and learned over the years, both of practicing family law and in being in one half of a long-term relationship and marriage. So yesterday we talked a little bit about gratitude and appreciation, both for the things that your spouse does and who that person is. Today we're continuing by talking about a really important topic, fighting fair. It's been my experience that this is really obvious within the divorce process that at least one spouse, and sometimes both of them, are not fighting fairly. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's really two categories, broad categories, that I see couples and partners falling into. One is the more healthy form of disagreement where you're seeking some understanding or seeking some compromise and resolution. And then the other side, of course, is seeking control. And what do I kind of mean by that? If you're engaging in a disagreement or you have a different position from your spouse on something that has to be dealt with, because I think a big thing that people don't always think about is this a fight you really have to have? You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, right? Not everything is worth potentially damaging a relationship over. And that doesn't mean that you need to let everything slide to the point that you build resentment, but it does mean that sometimes, you know that your spouse is ill and the dishes in the kitchen sink are not going to get done, even though that's technically something you've agreed that your spouse will do. Maybe it's just not worth raising it at this point in time, unless they get better and now it's been a long time and they still aren't addressing the issue. But when you're fighting fairly and you're seeking understanding, you'll hear a lot of active listening and attempt to understand why the other side has a position so opposed or different from the other spouse. Some empathy and recognizing that their feelings and approach are valid, even if it's different from your feelings or approach. And sometimes just recognizing that they are entitled to feel however they feel, whether you think that it makes logical sense or not. Feelings aren't required to be logical. So they're entitled to that, and just giving them the space to have that, while also actively listening and seeking compromise. Is there something that both of us can do that won't lead to that resentment later, but might help improve the way that we navigate through not being on the same page of something? The flip side of that, the negative side, is seeking control, and that's using tactics such as threats, manipulation, getting defensive and trying to prove that no, you didn't, or your spouse doesn't have the right to feel that way for whatever reason. Stonewalling or shutting down, refusing to even talk about an issue or engage in any meaningful dialogue. And then ultimatums, and that goes along with the threats and coercions. If you do this, I'm gone. And sometimes those boundaries are necessary. Certainly in an abusive situation they would be, but I often find that good boundary setting doesn't involve using that to control behavior or even to tell the other spouse. Sometimes a good boundary is simply, if my spouse does this, I will do X, without discussion. Because a lot of times when I hear people say I'm trying to set a boundary, what they're actually trying to do is exert control. So that is a long-winded, for me anyway, discussion of the difference between seeking understanding and seeking control. And fighting fair, of course, is looking more towards a goal directed discussion. So you're trying to be on the seeking understanding side and finding out if there's compromise or resolution that can be had. And then also sort of setting the level of importance of the disagreement, whether that's something that really even needs to be a fight, or if there's a way to sort of go around it that doesn't lead to resentment and splintering the relationship. So this was part 2 of our 5-part series this week on avoiding divorce and staying married. I hope this is helpful to you. If you find you can't stay married, I hope you'll consider reaching out to Gordon Law if your spouse and yourself or your marriage is located in Lincoln, Nebraska, or the surrounding area.